Hey Erik, what is your favorite era, Victorian or Edwardian? Are there any noticeable differences between the two eras when it comes to Highland dress?
And we've touched on this before. In fact, very recently, like earlier on this very same show. We tend to think of Highland dress as having been set in stone a little bit by the 1920s, like you said, but I would argue that it's a little earlier than that. There are certain innovations, namely the Prince Charlie, that came around in the 1920s. But to back up, the answer is, to me, I love them both, but Edwardian is easier to wear. Principal differences. Jordan, if you please. Start with a couple of examples of mid to late Victorian Highland dress. The one thing that's really obvious in both of these time periods is that men of means were much more likely to be wearing goat hair or horsehair sporns like this. You know, that was de rigueur. They were what you wore not just for special occasions like we do now, but pretty often, honestly.
And let's, for the audience who don't know, let's define time periods, Edwardian versus
Victorian. Oh, yeah, good point. Victorian basically is the queen, the reign of the Queen Victoria. So 1837 up to 1901, as memory serves. And these gents are basically from, like I said, the latter part of that. The doublet on the left, I'm guessing, is probably 1860s, 1870s. It definitely looks like a doublet, but this is where we see what we would now call a regimental or regulation
doublet.
Regulation doublet is a modern interpretation of this, or maybe a Kilkenny a little bit, but it's meant to be worn closed. It still has the tassets and the cuffs. That one is velvet, very clearly.
A couple other things I want to point out as well. Regulation doublet is basically a Prince Charlie with the tassets on the tassets are the little, like the flappy things on the bottom there for those who don't know. A regulation doublet would have a vest and would be worn open. Right. This is actually worn closed.
So that's more like the Kilkenny, I think, is designed to be that.
No, not Kilkenny.
Kenmore.
Kenmore.
Correct. Sorry, guys, I'm tired.
Yep.
So a Kenmore, if you look that up, you'll see it is supposed to be a throwback to this style.
Yep. And the other thing I'm going to point out is the guy on the left is in a studio.
They both are.
They both are. Now, the guy on the right doesn't have the fancy tree background, but it's not a real tree. This is both in a photo studio, to get good lighting, and because that was just kind of what was done.
Yeah. Most photography, if you were trying to show off your outfit and it was meant for posterity, was studio photography. Which in some cases calls into the question as to whether the subject of the photo was a full-time Scotsman or somebody who was just putting on Scottish costume for the occasion because it was a fun photograph.
Yep. Did they even own the tartan? Did they even own the jacket?
I would argue that in these cases, these are actually legit ownership, but could be wrong. I think that if either of them were for fun dressing up, the guy on the left is more likely to be. But it doesn't look that costumey to me. Now, the guy on the right, make sure I get my left and right.
The only thing that I think it looks costumey on the left is A, he's wearing a fly plaid. B, it does not appear to be the same tartan in the plaid as it is in the kilt. And the fly plaid isn't coming down in the front at all. It's all up at the shoulder and down the back. Sorry, continue.
That's okay. The guy on the right, very, very standard Highland wear. The big principal difference between this, besides the sporn type that we talked about, is the jacket he's wearing is called a sack jacket. That was a very common style of men's jacket, regardless of whether you were kilted or not. And as you can see there, it was very common to basically button it up with the top button. He's wearing a cravat, I just realized. It's a relatively skinny one, but he has it pushed up and closed with a woggle. I think that's what the Boy Scouts call it, a woggle. And so that is kind of Victorian. And then by the 1890s and into the Edwardian period, you get what's going to look like in the next slide. This is Edwardian gear. The guy on the left, I'm going to guess, is probably turn of the century, maybe 1890s. The guy on the right is actually King George, and that photo was taken in 1910. So this is where you start to see, with a few changes, these guys with these outfits, maybe not those beards, could walk out of our changing room in our shop today. The principal differences being, again, we don't wear quite as fancy sporrans during the day now, and we do not have removable collars. Throughout the 19th century, men would have shirts with separate collars because it's just easier to keep clean. Your shirt cuffs and your collar are where you get the most dirt, most body staining, sweat staining showing. And rather than dealing with washing the whole shirt, because that was a real pain in the ass, the technology developed pretty early on that you had disposable collars made from a variety of different materials. Most guys do not wear these days. We did have someone ask earlier, it's a question we never got to on the show, but ask, what do you feel about wearing separate collars? My answer is, it's pretty cool, but it's definitely going to be a fogey fashion. It's going to be a retro fashion, fogey as some guys call it. And your supplies are limited. There's one collarless shirt company in the UK called Denny's. I'm not sure how many others there are. Reenactor companies will sell stuff and you can buy the separate collars, but then you're dealing with the collar, the shirt, collar stud to keep it attached, etc. But this is really locked in. I mean, this is the silhouette that we still have to this day with minor variations back and forth. But I mean, those jackets are not that different from an Argyle that you'd see anybody wearing nowadays.
Yeah, I agree. Even up to the epaulets on the jacket there. Hey guys, if you like this type of content, remember, we have an entire community of people just like you out there on the interwebs. Come on in, the water's fine. Go check us out over on our Facebook group, Kilts and Culture, or we even have a subreddit under Kilts and Culture. So come on over, join us for the conversation.
It's fun.
Now, I noticed that they're wearing the kilt pin a bit higher than
which we talked about.
Than is typically worn today. The gent on the left, even though it's at an angle, I hate kilt pins worn at an angle. I believe the reason it's at an angle is because his left leg is up and it's pulling the apron of the kilt. So it's probably vertical on him as well. I note that he's wearing a horsehair sporran, not goat hair like in the previous.
How can you tell the difference personally?
Because they're longer, straighter hair cut flat at the bottom and the two big tassels.
As opposed to the foofy.
Yeah, okay. As opposed to goat hair where it's a little bit more natural, kind of hanging down. Yeah, goat or horsehair is much straighter. I'm not sure what the animal is on the right, but I noticed that King George has on a sporran strap, not a sporran chain.
Yep. Whereas this guy on the left has a slightly ornate chain. It's actually, you can see the long rectangular links, which I've seen many times.
Yeah.
So
but again, both in a photo studio, not anywhere, natural looking. So I always look at these photos and I think to myself, like, is that whether it's this gent here out of these two, and then Jordan, go back one, and these two, the gent on the right here looks the most natural. He looks like he actually wears that on a regular basis, and that's just, I am what I am, Popeye kind of vibes to him. Now,
look at how kind of rumply the kilt is.
Yeah,
and the kilt hose are not decorative at all.
The vest looks like he's worn it a lot because it has like the little lines in it. He looks
that's also the quality of the material. You remember that worsteds became more and more fine as the century went on. So there's just a bulkiness to this fabric that's different from the guys in the next decade to decade and a half.
And it's also the cut of a sack coat versus
correct.
Yeah. Versus a tailored, jacket meant to be worn as
Interestingly, though, these jackets evolved out of the sack coat. It's just they decided to stop, buttoning it at the top like that. I mean, but that trend did continue. I actually have an image of Kaiser Wilhelm as a child with his dad, King Frederick, first Kaiser, and and Frederick is wearing a sack coat exactly like that. Not even as nice, actually. But which is odd because he's a freaking Kaiser. But I would also bet that he is of a military background.
Yeah, I do not like the short lapels. Lapels that short, that feels a little bit excessive to me. But who am I? So interesting.
There you go. So this is where we're looking at, again. Go back to the Edwardian one. This is where it got dialed in, and then like I said, there were a few innovations and changes and simplifications that happened in the decades after this, but this is where a lot of our stuff really just got locked in, because you can almost guarantee it's going to look good on most guys, I think, is part of it. And it's not so much ornamentation that looks ridiculous. You still have the traditional ornamentation, the military-inspired cuffs and the epaulettes. So yeah, but my personal preference, Edwardian. Could you emulate these looks? Yes.
I'm going to point something else out I just noticed. The set size of the kilt on King George is
That's a really good
freaking
point.
huge.
What is that? Do you have any guess what that tartan might be?
No,
There's no way
it's
to
black
tell.
and white.
We'll have to
And
do a color
it doesn't
thing.
matter what the tartan is. But my point is,
Large.
if you look at the stripe that's going straight down the center, it's actually, you see a little bit of lighter gray off to the side of the white stripe down the dead center. But the stripes that are essentially on his legs, the further out stripes, the one in line with the kilt pin and the one in line with the back of his Balmore or Glengarry that he's holding there, those white stripes. If I had to guess, if he's a normal, average size individual, that's probably 12 inches apart, 14 inches apart. That is a big freaking set.
I'd also argue that it looks more fashionable. It's not. I would like to know what the tartan is to find out if there was a familial connection to it, or if it's just like, I like this.
Yeah.
Because we do know that they did wear fashion tartans sometimes.
Yeah.
So
and I know that a lot of tartans going back, 100, even 80 years, like the 1950s, like the first example of the reproduction or weathered McDonald tartan. Caleb Birch has one, really, really old example. And the McDonald tartan is a really, really big set. And I remember looking at it going like, wow, that's freaking huge. But that's what was in fashion for that time. Which would lead me to believe that the pleating on those would either be reverse set or a little bit more haphazardy still back then.
I would love to see that kilt.
Yeah, I'd love to see the back.
Would
Would you mind turning it around there, King?
As soon as we get the TARDIS built, we'll take care of that.
So,
yeah,
indeed.
Do you know there's a portrait of John Brown wearing a tweed kilt?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's in the.
So those are older.
Is it the Maclay prints?
It is.
Yeah.
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 Look at me,
John Brown was the personal servant of Queen Victoria for a number of years. For those who don't know.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's the lesson of where Highland wear, as we think of it, kind of
evolved and stuck.
Yeah, and kind of stuck.
No, but I think it's a very, very valid point that outside of the horsehair sporran, the guy on the left hand, because most civilians don't wear horsehair sporrans at this point, today in 2026. If that guy walked out of our changing room and the collar was not so of a period, he'd be fine. But King George right there, still like that chef's kiss. There's nothing I would change about that outfit. That looks great, exactly as is, and he could walk into a St. Andrew's dinner today and be great.
And I've been able to replicate the look of his tie with a regular necktie. You just tie it a little bit, so you start it a little bit shorter, so you have more of a thin band, and you can make more of a knot. So it can be done. Yeah, it can be done.
It goes to how classic and timeless Highland wear really is.
Like I said, you can be pretty sure you're going to look good in this. There's not much reason to change it any further at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's stuck in a particular time frame. Like we were talking about ascots. Like ascots to me feel like the 50s, 60s, 70s, and then people just stopped. Highland wear looks great like this.
Well, most guys wouldn't wear a wingtip collar like that on the daily, but
a wing collar shirt.
I have.
Fair.
But now if you want more casual photos, let me know. Next time I'll do pictures of ghillies and as in groundskeepers and all that kind of stuff, because shows a lot of the same stuff.
Indeed.